As the marshal placed the man on the floor, the dead woman on the other side of the cabin woke up and began biting the passenger next to her. Yelling and screaming broke out again. Gasps of shock rippled through the cabin as passengers stared wide-eyed at the scene unfolding before them again. She was across the 4-seat center section and 5 rows ahead of where Ben stood in the aisle, but he could clearly see what was happening. One man tried to push the woman off her victim. She snapped and bit a piece of flesh out of his bicep. He gasped in pain and stumbled back a couple of steps in the aisle. Cradling his arm, he ran toward the back of the plane. To Ben's surprise, the dead woman swallowed the piece from his arm whole, barely chewing it all. She wasn't just biting people. She was feeding on them. "Oh my God, did you see that?" Ben said to Ty. His heart raced and he wiped his damp palms nervously on his shorts. Like a deer caught in the headlights, Ben was frozen in the aisle, mesmerized by the gruesome sight. The air marshal quickly finished hog-tying the man, then he stood and bounded down the aisle toward business class. He cut across to the other side of the plane when he reached the mid-cabin restrooms. The marshal grabbed the woman roughly and pulled her out of the row of seats, throwing her into the aisle. Her blue t-shirt was stained red. Enraged, she turned and launched herself at him. They grappled in the aisle, bumping into other passengers who squealed and cringed in their seats. A couple of people got up and moved toward the back of the plane, while several others moved toward the front to get out of the way. Unwittingly, the marshal bumped into one of the frightened passengers, which knocked him off balance. The crazed woman pushed forward, snapping her jaws and slamming the marshal against the bathroom wall. The marshal's hand slipped off her shoulder as he fought to keep her snarling face away from his throat. She took advantage of the slip and tore a chunk off of his forearm. Bright red blood squirted onto her face as the marshal bellowed in pain and tried to shove her away. Blood splattered on the wall as they continued to struggle. The marshal was finally able to knee her in the stomach and shove her back, creating some space to maneuver. Knowing he was in mortal danger, he pulled his gun out and fired 2 shots into her chest. Everyone seemed to jump in shock. The sound of the shots was deafening in the enclosed space. The woman stumbled back. Her arms flailed, slapping passengers and leaving bloody streaks on their faces like war paint. When she regained balance, she started back at the marshal. What should have killed her had barely even fazed her. He fired again. She kept coming.